Welcome to the news in details now. The President of the Republic of Rwanda, Paul Kagame, held talks virtually with the President of African Development Bank, Dr. Adesina Akinwumi, and they discussed on the development of vaccination capacity in Africa. President Paul Kagame stressed that it is time for vaccines and other medical equipments to be made in Africa for the benefit of the people of the continent as well as its partners. Rwanda and Senegal are the countries on the continent that are about to start manufacturing vaccines. The Rwanda Food and Drugs Authority has confirmed that in collaboration with German company BioNTech, next year, 2022, Rwanda will start manufacturing tuberculosis and malaria vaccines, followed by COVID-19 vaccines. Now, the World Bank has commended the way Rwanda utilizes the support she is provided with when it comes to developmental projects.
Comments were made as Rwanda's Prime Minister met and held talks with one of the World Bank's substantive executive directors for Africa on the body's board of directors on Friday. He noted that the support provided by the World Bank to Rwanda is so well utilized that funds are depleted so fast. Money meant for other countries that had fallen behind on their schedules is diverted to meet Rwanda's needs. Last year, for example, we depleted the money that was meant for infrastructure projects like energy distribution, road construction and urbanization that the World Bank supports us in. The World Bank Executive Director noted that Rwanda's development pace is clear for all to see.
I came here to attend the African Development Bank in 2014. The changes up to now are certain phenomenal in terms of when you look at the road infrastructure, the buildings and around. Of course, I've not had the fortune of going beyond Kigali, but certainly from Kigali side, my view is that it's excellent infrastructure, especially on roads, and that is what we expect for all the parts of Rwanda.
The World Bank is an important development partner for Rwanda, focusing on improving social welfare, but that partnership has now been expanded to include building up the technical infrastructure to deal with the problems presented by calamities like the COVID-19 pandemic, following the lessons that have been learned from the outbreak.
Now, Rwanda has received a grant of up to 75 billion Rwandan francs, which will aid in facilitating medicine needed in the country. Gabi Movunyi reports.
Around 75 million, or about 75 billion Rwandan francs, has been donated by the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, as part of a 5-year agreement that will help Rwanda Medical Supply Limited in its responsibilities. The Chief Executive Officer of Rwanda Medical Supply Limited says the funding is needed to help with staff training and will have medicines in stock that are relevant to the market needs.
The first thing that will be maybe kicked out is, let's say, stock out. We had an issue of stock outs. So with this support, we are going to improve our data visibility so that will help us to procure based on the quantities needed. So that will help us to overcome stockouts, even expiries. So that is one. Another thing is it could take long to procure health products. So now with this support, with the capacity building, so we will make sure that at least it takes short period to avail needed health commodities. And the other thing we had, of course, we had capacity building issue. So this support will help us to also build the capacity of our staff so that they can deliver on time.
The project will begin with focus on the delivery of ARVs, anti-malarial drugs, contraceptives, and healthcare for parents and children. The Minister of Health notes that this financing agreement strengthens good relations between Rwanda and the United States through USAID. He adds that speeding up delivery of pharmaceutical services in the country through technology is one of the priorities of the project.
It's an agreement for 5 years, amounting $75 million, which will support the capacity building of this new institution, but also the procurement of different commodities, starting with HIV commodities, and later on it will be expanded to malaria and reproductive health commodities. So I'm very happy to have this partnership signed, because it brings additional resources to improve operations here in RMS, but also to improve the management of the entire institution and to make sure that the use of data is really strengthened for decision making.
The USAID Mission Director for Rwanda says the organization will continue to work with Rwanda at various levels as the country continues to demonstrate good performance across different levels.
There's much to be done still, and any system needs to be strengthened to ensure the right data is used to kind of collect information to avoid stockouts, to ensure that prices are uniform and there is no markup at the end result, which is sometimes passed on to Rwanda citizens, and of course to make sure that there is a good, strong system that can always have good information flow. These are things that we, through our partner, will be able to help the ministry and help RMS improve over time, because again, we have learned from other places and very much looking forward to be able to kind of give that support, technical support, and of course helping to fund the purchase of these key medicines, HIV/AIDS, as we said, and if we're lucky, and I know we will be, moving on to more important medicine procurements like malaria, mother and child mortality transmission medicines, etc. So again, very proud to be here today on behalf of USAID and the US government to support this initiative.
The grant is expected to be issued in installments over the next 5 years. Gabi Muvonyi, reporting for RTV News.
In an exclusive interview with RBA, Dr. Alice Were Munderitu, the Special Advisor to the UN Secretary General on Genocide Prevention, explains the mandate of her office within the UN and what her priorities have been in terms of genocide prevention, and the most of what she has been doing during her visit to Kigali has to do with ensuring that such atrocities never happen again through initiatives like introducing genocide courses in universities across the continent. Take a look.
It's really important to tell the people of Rwanda in the world that this country that I am in today, that I'm privileged to be in today, occupies a very important historical point within the UN, because my office only exists because the UN and the international community failed to stop the genocide against the Tutsi in this country in 1994, and also failed to stop the genocide in Srebrenica against the Bosniak Muslims in 1995. So extremely important for me to acknowledge that I am here to pay my respects to the victims and to the survivors of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi here in Rwanda, and to say that so much of what I'm doing here is about never again, trying as much as possible that this never happens again. So that said, my key priority, or the priorities of the mandate of my office is first and foremost to analyze. We analyze information on risk factors that could lead to genocide, and we do that for all the countries in the world. We are an office with a global mandate, and we analyze information. It comes into us through several UN sources. Some of those sources, of course, they don't pick up that information for purposes of examining whether or not it's going to lead to genocide. So, for example, we get information from the Office of the High Commissioner for Refugees or from the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, and then we analyze it and ensure that no situation in the world is evolving into a genocide. I would like to say that we also have very key and core priority. In 2019, the Secretary General launched the UN Strategy and Plan of Action for hate speech, and it is domiciled in our office. We are the focal point for the United Nations, for the whole world, on hate speech, and we ensure that we work with the member states. We support member states. We support UN country teams. We support community-based organizations. Anyone who reaches out to us, we support them to develop hate speech action plans. So a hate speech action plan analyzes, for example, a society, a country, in terms of the hate speech trends, and then ensures that beyond the analysis, there is also makes a determination in terms of what to do, how it can be addressed. And why this is so important is because there is no single genocide or atrocity crime, I would say. And by atrocity crimes, I mean war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. none of them has ever happened without hate speech. They are always preceded by hate speech.
Yes.
Yeah, so in terms of priorities, there would be, of course, speaking to the mandate. Very importantly, we feel that we have to keep working on education. Education is very, very key. We have generations of people who were born after the genocide in Rwanda against the Tutsi and the genocide in Srebrenica, and they do not have the awareness. So we work a lot in terms of putting genocide into curriculums, you know, and that kind of thing worldwide.
Absolutely.
And I would say that right now, one of my key priorities is working with the scholars. And we've started with scholars here on this continent in Africa. And we are developing a course outline, and that will in turn lead to a curriculum. This curriculum will in turn inform courses that will go around the continent in a caravan on the study of genocide, and also be embedded into already existing university programs. And even as we wait to, at some point, have genocide, you know, master's degrees all over the continent.
Absolutely.
As it is right now, it's extremely sad that it's only in Rwanda that we have a full-fledged, you know, a degree on the genocide. All others are really short studies, and either they're embedded in something, they just, you know, they're
shallow.
Yes, and some are not even examinable. So we have to make genocide studies examinable. So really that's part of the key priority.
Dr. Nderito also touched base on what preventive work the UN is doing to ensure that perpetrators of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi that are still being protected by some countries are held accountable.
There is a lot that's happening through the criminal tribunals, but there is also a lot of preventive work that we do in terms of ensuring that this doesn't happen again. And part of that preventive work is calling out countries and member states, really, and also seeking partnerships with them and having conversations behind the scenes with so many leaders in regards to why they are still holding, why are they protecting people who perpetrated the genocide. And, you know, it's a very difficult conversation because the way genocide perpetrators have been protected in some countries, those countries would never dream of protecting like a common murderer, you know, or a common rapist. Yet these people killed thousands of people, and even worse, they planned to kill, because really genocide is about that intent that you sat down and you planned to kill. You drew up a list, you said we are going to kill the following people, and this is where they live. And for no reason, like we'll just go and kill them because they belong to this identity. So it's a lot of work, and you'll see much more coming out of our office now. It was extremely important for me to come here to Rwanda to hear from people themselves, because I had just come from Bosnia and Herzegovina, where we have seen just recently the verdict against General Mladic of the Court of Appeal, and the verdicts continue coming in. And I must say that in Bosnia and Herzegovina, the same problem of people being protected by other countries has been the case. It's work in progress, but I can assure you we don't sleep. All the time we think about what to do to bring these people to trial, to bring these people to justice, and therefore ensure that even as we talk about trust, building trust, and reconciliation, that at the same time accountability is working hand in hand with that.
With cases of domestic violence against men persisting, officials in the Ministry of Gender and Family Promotion say they are going to work to increase awareness of the problem and of the laws in place to protect victims of such violence, because it has become clear that not many people seem to know how to pursue what they are legally entitled to.
The principal male victim of gender-based domestic violence in our report will be labeled Kalisa, though that is not his real name for reasons of protecting his identity. He told us that he married his now ex-wife in 2002 when she was still a university student, and everything remained bliss in their family until she completed her studies and got a well-paying job. No home was happier than mine because we loved and appreciated each other very much. It was almost unbelievable. Unfortunately for Kalisa, reality set in when he lost his job just as his wife started earning her salary, and everything turned for the worst. She would call me a dog, saying I spent the entire day sleeping. At the dinner table, she would make sure to say something so hurtful I would stop eating and go to bed early. Eventually, Kalisa's wife got some male friends to help her throw out her husband. I asked her to at least let me take some beddings with me because I had nothing to sleep in, and she dared me to try to take anything with me, pointing to her backup of male friends. To this day, my clothes have remained in that house. It was a traumatic experience, and she had the audacity to refuse to give me anything, not even a mattress, yet I am the one who bought almost all those things. After his divorce, Kalisa continued to suffer because of the woman he once called his wife. She turned my kids against me. Despite the court ruling that they should alternate between living with me and her, they never visit me. Even when I tried to call them, they hung up on me. Unfortunately, Kalisa's experiences are not new, as more and more incidents are reported in the media of women turning on their husbands. Every time we argue, she lies to everyone that I threatened to kill her, and it hurts me that she would go around saying such things. The woman went to buy a knife at the local shop, and no one guessed what she planned to do with it. Before anyone could react, she had stabbed her husband in his side. Kalisa admits that men do not report spousal abuse, be it verbal or physical, as much as women do, but claims that even when they do report what is happening to them, they are not treated on equal footing with female victims by the authorities, claims that have been made by other individuals, but are denied by authorities at the Rwanda Investigation Bureau, who point out that all victims of such violence are treated equally, and that the problem is instead the social stigma attached to a man claiming that he's being abused by his spouse. Officials in the Ministry of Gender and Family Promotion agree with this assessment and also point out that many men are even unaware that the law protects them against any form of violence, regardless of whether or not it is domestic, just as it protects women. So sensitization efforts are needed to address this apparent ignorance. Regardless of the reasons why it is so, the fact is that reported cases of gender-based violence are anything but balanced. Between July 2019 and last month, 92% of all cases reported to RIB of spousal abuse were submitted by women. The same applies specifically for physical abuse. And for emotional abuse, the gap grows to 94% of submitted complaints being brought in by women. Authorities have continued to warn that such crimes will not be tolerated, regardless if they are committed by men or women.
Transparency International Rwanda has revealed that at least 20% of public tender bidders are exposed to corruption, and this has a significant impact on the economy and development of the country. The issue of corruption in public procurement has been highlighted in a study that was conducted by Transparency International Rwanda between March and June in this year. The study, dubbed Integrity and Transparency in Public Procurement in the Field of Infrastructure, shows that although 79% of bidders in those markets say they have not encountered corruption, while the other 20% believe they have encountered it, as for 14% have been asked for it and 6% are willing to be involved in it. However, only 18% were involved, while 82% refused to take part in it. The executive director of Transparency International Rwanda, Upiganyi Apollinaire, says the root cause of it is the interagency interference in market initiatives for their own benefit.
Due to the interagency interference in the tender process, when shortlisting, certain changes are made at the last minute. We've received such cases, and some bidders come to us telling us that they had high marks, but afterwards everything changed. There is one case in which we did a thorough analysis and we did follow up and reported it to some institutions, and it is currently being resolved.
Bidders claim that they often bribe to get a contract or get paid for their work, and even offer it as a sign of appreciation after getting a contract. Most of them bribe with a lot of money, whereby 29.5% say they pay between 15% and 20% of the contract, 28% give between 10% and 14%, 23% give less than 5%, while 19.5% give between 5% and 9%. The chairman of the Governing Council of Institution of Engineers, Rwanda, Kazawadi Papias, explained some of the reasons why some are involved in corruption.
Impamvu nyamukuru kuki umuntu atanga ruswa ni ukugira ngo abone ibyo atarakwiriye.
The main reason a person bribes is to get that which they didn't deserve. So you find that some bidders join without having all the requirements. And as we make an analysis, most of the time we find that it was in favor of someone from the get-go.
This has a significant impact on the economy and development of the country and the well-being of the people, according to the market development expert Ruzibiza Steven.
The government may invest in something that benefits the public, for example, in the TVET program or healthcare. All of these are established for the people. Hence, if not followed up, some people will be limited from accessing the opportunities or services, which is actually a huge problem.
Deputy Ombudsperson in charge of preventing and fighting injustice, Odette Yankurije, says the findings of this study contribute to the fight against corruption. Some were suggesting that there should be an appeals panel. All those doing the blacklisting should come from different institutions. All these suggestions will be taken under consideration. We'll also have forums where we discuss on corruption, and that is where we are going to conclude on what has to come out of the research, as we shall decide on how this can be solved and which respective people to handle it and for how long. The 2020 report of the Rwanda Public Procurement Authority also shows that there are about 113 procurement contracts that were delayed to be signed for no apparent reason, and 148 other tenders were completed but later highlighted serious shortcomings. Now, the Ministry of Health has announced that it will continue to acquire vaccines that have been approved by the World Health Organization in order to increase the number of vaccinated people in the continuing fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. Gabi Muvunyi continues.
Rwanda has received a consignment of 200,000 doses of AstraZeneca vaccine from the Greek military. The Director General of Cooperation in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Greece says that giving the vaccines to Rwanda highlights the cordial relations between the two nations.
And it's an indication of our solidarity to the Rwandan people. Have in mind that we brought these vaccines while there are other countries geographically closer to us who haven't received vaccines from us yet. Rwanda is the first African country, and it's a country very dear to us. We hope that apart from the benefit for the health of the people of Rwanda, this will be the first step of a closer cooperation between the two countries and the two nations. Greece was always a friend of the African people.
The Rwandan Minister of State in charge of primary health care notes these latest vaccines will boost the number of vaccinated people.
Because of the vaccination campaigns under Ministry of Health, that's why I'm here to receive this vaccine to be able to provide them to the population. So we believe this vaccine will be going to target especially elder people in the rural area, as long as we still have a low coverage among that group, because of even also they are more vulnerable and high risk of dying.
In addition to Greece's donation, Rwanda has taken delivery of another 108,000 doses of Johnson & Johnson vaccine purchased by the Rwandan government through a program known as Africa Vaccine Acquisition Trust, the consignment having arrived in Kigali on Thursday. The director of UNECA's Sub-Regional Office for Eastern Africa says tackling the COVID-19 pandemic is important because it will help the economy to recover while safeguarding the health and well-being of the people.
You know that the COVID has hit our economies very much, hit our societies. We have a high toll of death and livelihood that have been destroyed, job losses, and GDP, economic recession. So vaccine is the way out. It has been very difficult to access the vaccine. Access has been difficult, affordability has been difficult. So African leaders have come together to do pool procurement, to put order together on international market in order to really to access those vaccines and to get it at accessible prices. And now we are delivering the first allocation to Rwanda, and so we are very happy. This will really contribute to all the effort that the government of Rwanda.
The Johnson & Johnson vaccine is administered only once, and it is expected that Rwanda will get 2,191,000 vaccines. Rwanda currently administers 4 types of vaccines, including AstraZeneca, Pfizer that was administered from the beginning of the year, Sinopharm from last month, and Johnson & Johnson. Gabi Muvunyi, reporting for RTV News.
NBA J-League side Toronto Raptors head coach Patrick Mutombo is in Rwanda to conduct a coaches and players training camp at Petit Stade in Remera. He earlier today spoke to my colleague Sam Kalisa to elaborate more on the significance of the ongoing trainings and what needs to be done to develop the basketball game on the continent.
No, my stay here has been great. I first set foot in Rwanda with Masai Ujiri. Actually, I think was with Giants of Africa. We've been coming here, so I'm pretty familiar with the country. And this time I came, my aim was to really spend time with the coaches and share with them some of the knowledge I've been able to amass through the different years being in a business, and at the same time giving them the opportunity to coach their own players through the different. So we are trying a different format of coaches clinic in hopes of growing our coaches. So the stay has been great.
All right. What is the main expected goal when it comes to these trainings?
Well, the main expected goal, I think, is for our coaches to realize that to raise the level of basketball in our countries, on the continent, it starts with the teachers, the coaches.
All right.
And the better we become, the better we are, the better they become. And that's why we called it coach to coach huddle, because we're able to get together, share, find ways to get better, and then use the players to test some of the things, some of the theories we are learning, some of the practical applications that makes good coaches. And that's what we've done. I think this is our second day. We have another one tomorrow, and so far the feedback has been very positive, and our coaches are responding well to it because it's something a little bit different. But we believe it really helps and contributes to the growth of our coaches.
All right, so apart from the training camps, Africa is marking almost 6 years since the Africa's basketball body, the FIBA Africa, has been established. And how do you rate Africa's basketball currently and the future of the game on the continent?
Well, I think the game is growing. There's some people that are doing some serious work on the continent. I think FIBA is working. The NBA is involved in the continent. And the reason I think you see so many people flocking towards the continent is because there's potential, right? There's potential, there's talent. And that as we go, and that's part of the reason why I'm here. That's part of the reason, because I do think that, once our coaches even elevates the level of coaching, the level of expertise, is going to trickle down to our players, because what we have on the continent of Africa, nobody else has. Our athleticism, our grit. You see different demographics.
All right.
Right? In terms of heights, in terms of build, in terms of girth. We just have such a variety of bodies and people. I think the infrastructures are catching up. I think our leaders are beginning to understand. I think in Kigali, Rwanda is a good example of understanding the importance of good infrastructures to help the game grow. I think because we're, the accumulation of those different elements will help the game grow even more. And it's time, man. It's time for Africa, I think, to leave its mark and to really come to the forefront, because we have everything we need to be relevant participant.
You just mentioned about it, the African diaspora in Europe, in America, and everywhere. What do you think is the role in growing the game on the African continent?
I think it's important because ultimately this is home. You know, we are a diaspora. This is home. This is our motherland, and this is where everything started for us. And coming back and sharing and participate in the elevation of the continent, it's not a, the way I look at it, it's not a gift, but it's an obligation and a privilege. A privilege, because there's just so much wealth, so much potential on the continent, and anybody who gets to participate should feel privileged and honored.
And so as we get towards the end of this interview, where do you think is the gap, in your own observation, where do you think is the gap regarding the development of the game on the African continent, and what should everyone involved in the development of the game do to take it to the destination that we all wish to see it to?
That's a very good question. You know, I think infrastructure is one, right? Understanding that we need infrastructure. We need places where kids can go and play basketball, where kids can go and play soccer, where kids can go and really just have fun with the game, but also learn the skills that separate people, because the physical aptitudes are there. The physical qualities are there. Just walk on the street and you'll see 7-footers, and you'll see people that were just built for the sport. But you gotta give them a chance to go and have fun and fall in love with the sport. That's one. Secondly, we have to raise our level of expertise, you know, and that's why I think a lot of it, the diaspora plays a big role, because once you've been exposed to different things, now you are able to come and share with your brothers and sisters. And why is it different is because you are familiar. You are familiar with the realities of the continent.
Absolutely.
So when you begin to speak to your brother or your sister, you know, you can empathize with their reality, but at the same time trying to bring both together and present something that's authentic, and that's something realistic and applicable to the environment where they have to function.
All right.
We get those two things right, watch out, world. We're coming.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Muto.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And that story wraps up tonight's bulletin. On behalf of the entire news production team, thank you for your company. I'm Jane Mutoni. Have a nice weekend.